In the following video, I play a female cisgender social worker with a 23-year-old male identifying cisgender heterosexual male from the suburbs of Boston who has been experiencing anxiety for the past year. This is our first in-person meeting where we begin to explore the presenting problem from the client's perspective. Throughout our session, I utilize 4 narrative therapy techniques in order to distinguish the person himself from the presenting problem itself. I engage in externalizing conversations where I begin to shift the language from the client as anxious to a client currently experiencing the problem of anxiety. I attempt to position myself as a curious and non-judgmental therapist through summarizing the client's words, reflecting, inferring, and through asking therapeutic questions. Lastly, through seeking unique outcomes and deepening into different perspectives, we begin to shift the problem-saturated story to an alternative with glimpses of hope and strength. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about what brings you here today?
I've been very kind of stressed and anxious recently.
And when did you first notice this happening?
I would say about 6 months ago, while I was working a very stressful job. That was a temporary job. I started getting more and more anxious, but the job has been over for about a month, and I'm still having the similar feelings.
So would you say it's a little concerning that you're still feeling those same feelings even though the job's over?
Yeah, definitely, because I think I was really just hoping that it would, all those anxious feelings would go away after the job, but that hasn't happened.
Exactly. Can you tell me a little bit more about what those feelings are like? Is it mostly in your mind or in your body?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely both. It's usually one thing, the heart rate increase. I always feel like my heart is kind of pounding out of my chest. So that's definitely, I would describe as a body sensation. And a lot of times, I guess my thoughts will be like racing pretty quickly, but a lot of times my thoughts are also, mixed, being worried about, my heart and being worried about things just in my life too.
So when this anxiety sort of creeps in and you feel your heart racing, how long would you say it usually lasts?
I would say there are definitely weeks where there's some amount of feeling like my heart rate isn't increased for a lot of the time, like during the workday and stuff. But I definitely have episodes of higher anxiety that maybe last 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so, and then I start to calm down after that.
Okay, so even though it feels like this anxiety is taking over your life sometimes, it doesn't always last a long period of time.
Right.
Okay. And what would you say are some personal qualities or some things in your environment that have helped you push past feeling like this anxiety takes a hold of you?
I would say, I try to just calm down and, usually take a break, maybe listen to some music, close my eyes, and just, kind of slow my breathing down if my breathing's getting really quick. So I try to do, basically just kind of try to calm down by myself, I find is kind of the only thing that can help sometimes.
So I appreciate that you've already been trying to get through this, and it sounds like you're working really hard to push through these feelings of anxiety. I'm wondering if you could go back to what you were telling me about when you first noticed it creep into your life, and if you could tell me, were there any other people who noticed it, or was it really just you who noticed it first coming into your life?
I think I first noticed it as my job started getting more stressful, but then I think one of my coworkers did say he kind of he noticed that my mind was kind of all over the place. I couldn't focus that well because I was trying to do so many things. So I think he may have just thought, oh, it might just be I'm a little stressed today. He might have thought, but yeah, I would say others have noticed that I've been kind of on edge and anxious.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there are people who know you when you aren't feeling these feelings of anxiety, and they also are able to point out when you are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And has anyone else noticed any of these feelings?
Um, I don't think so. No, maybe some of my friends, but I haven't asked them. They haven't talked to me about it, so I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it sounds like some people in your life are really aware of when anxiety takes a hold of you, and other people may not notice it as much. Is that correct?
Yes.
Um, so when you do feel anxiety creeping in and your heart starts racing like you described to me, um, what do you feel? Do you feel like anxiety stops other people from knowing the good qualities of you while it is there, or what does anxiety tell other people about you?
Um, that's a tough question. I think it definitely prevents me from thinking clearly, and I think that results in maybe people not seeing my full self or full potential, because I can't see my own when I'm super anxious and distracted. Um, so it definitely affects, I think, relationships in some way, and I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes the anxiety can make me a little like self-focused, self-serving, because I'm really focused on just making myself feel better and not so worried about friends or people around me.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes it feels like the anxiety can direct how you interact with other people.
Yeah, definitely, because I think like I'll be paying attention to my heart rate, or I'll be sweating, and then I'll be thinking about that a lot while I'm trying to interact with somebody.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that other people may view you as somebody who is not thinking clearly or doesn't have a clear head, as you said. What do you think these friends or these other people who see you when anxiety is getting a hold of you, how do they view people who don't have a clear head? What do you think the assumptions they're making about you at that point
Um, I'm not sure. Sometimes I get worried that I think my friends are thinking I'm just kind of like out of it or not paying attention to them at all, because I am just really worried about my own anxiety and anxious feelings. Um, yeah.
So if these friends did know that anxiety was sometimes taking a hold of your life and it sometimes made it hard to think clearly, what would that say about you, and what would they be thinking?
Um, I'm worried that my friends are gonna think maybe I'm weak, maybe like I can't handle a normal amount of stress that they can handle, because I know they get stressed out too, but they seem to be able to deal with it more. So I'm worried that my friends are kind of gonna look down on me as weak if they hear that I can't control my how anxious I am or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is that what you would say is people who are strong have the ability to control their anxiety, and then people who are weak struggle to control anxiety.
Yeah, yeah. I think it sounds a little harsh when you say it like that, and I don't know if I would agree with that
Mm-hmm.
completely. Now that I have experienced it, but I'm definitely concerned at how others. I think a lot of other people think that, like my friends, so they might view it as that.
Of course, yeah. I think sometimes we can always be harsher on ourselves than we would for our friends. Um, what would you say to a friend if they said the same thing about feeling insecure that others would start noticing that anxiety was seeping into their life?
Um, I think I would try to be supportive. I think see if I can help them in some way.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any ideas of how you could help them?
Um, I would definitely tell them that I'm there to talk about it if they
Mm-hmm.
want to talk. Um, and other than that, I'm not sure. Maybe I could suggest like certain like changes to their work if it was a work issue or if there was something in their lives that was making them super super anxious. Um, but other than that, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you have some insight into how to work past certain aspects of the problem coming into your life. Um, I'm wondering, with that insight about maybe having some support from friends or family, when was the last time you feel like you stood up to anxiety when you felt its pressure and you just kind of ignored it or refused to let it seep in and affect you?
I would say the last time I stood up to anxiety, in a way, I kind of feel like I am trying to stand up to it in a lot because I do feel like it's kind of a fight, like I'm fighting against it. Um, but I would say, a few days ago when I had a really strong kind of like attack of anxiety, I just tried really hard to relax and I really focused on my breathing. And I was able to, calm down in about 20 minutes or so. And I think all things considering, compared to sometimes how something like that will sort of sideline me for a little while, I think I was able to push by it, at least the worst of the anxiety, for a little while, which I was happy about.
So it sounds like you're already understanding that you have the ability to push past anxiety at least sometimes. And maybe it's a little easier in certain settings than other settings. Is there ever a setting where you never feel anxiety's pressure?
Um, I'm not sure. I think in general, getting outside helps me to avoid it. But I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a place that I know is like anxiety free for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be really hard, especially when it feels like it's always sort of an influence in our lives and it's just a matter of fighting against it. Or sometimes allowing it to seep in and fight it while it's there. Is there a place or a time where you remember it being the most strong and feeling like it has the most influence over you?
Um, yeah, I would say, overall, I think the past few months it's been, really up and down. I don't know if there was one sort of period of time where it was worse, but I'd say maybe, when I first started getting these really anxious and increased heart rate feelings a couple of months ago at my last job. I would say that was probably the worst partially because I, had never really experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And like your heart rate shooting up like that when you're just sitting down, it's not like you're running or anything.
Right.
So that was really, nerve wracking at the beginning.
Right. It sounds like when you feel these anxious feelings that it can feel sort of out of your control at certain times. So during this sort of tough period at your job where you started feeling anxiety seep in for the first time, maybe in your life, was there anything that anxiety tried to get you to do that you really didn't want to do?
Not so much. More in that it just, I get very overwhelmed by the number of things I have to do. So if it's at work and I have 20 things to do, and then maybe I have 5 things to do at my apartment, and maybe I have a few phone calls I have to make after work, it kind of all adds up. That's kind of how it is with me. It's sort of like I can't choose what thing to do because there's so many that it's just kind of gets overwhelming.
Right. And it's a problem that doesn't just stay at work or stay at school. It kind of seeps into all aspects of your life.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I can definitely understand how anxiety seeping into these different aspects of your life can feel very overwhelming. And it sounds like often it may cause your heart to feel like it's racing and just an overall sense of being overwhelmed. I'm wondering if this problem of anxiety is actually, has it ever been useful? Has it allowed you to do things that you wouldn't have done otherwise in any sort of positive way?
Yes, I would say that. I think sometimes when I have sometimes when I'm having sort of like peak amount of anxiety, I can't really get anything done, but I will say that I think the anxiety does help to drive me to accomplish a lot in the workplace, at least, because I'm often very, I also get stressed out about, disappointing other people, and that sort of stress can motivate me to work harder.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I think it can help in kind of small amounts, but if I'm really, really anxious, it's kind of overpowers me where I can't really concentrate on anything.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like maybe some short-term goals and different things that we can work on together, maybe just about reducing the level, knowing that certain aspects of the problem may actually be useful in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Are there any other settings besides the work setting where you feel like this low level problem may actually be useful for you in getting things done or in any other way?
Yeah, I think in the same way, sometimes, that kind of uh, anxiety feeling, I think it can definitely help me to, motivate to do other things too.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I have a house project I'm working on, or if doing something for a friend.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can. I mean, I'm certainly, awake, and I'm not tired or anything when I'm super anxious. So
Mm-hmm.
it does kind of give me energy to accomplish things sometimes. But the downside of that, obviously, is it's tough to sort of calm down and bring myself down to a state where I can kind of accomplish those things maybe even better, even if it wasn't as rushed or immediate.
So what I'm hearing, and when you describe both the negative instances and the positive instances of when anxiety takes a hold of you, I hear a similarity in that maybe it has a little bit of control and a little bit of power, and it feels like it's maybe working on its own. Do you feel like anxiety is truly working on its own, or does it have sort of like a partner in crime or some sort of other influence on you when it works to take a hold of you?
I think, yeah, I would say feeling on it. I think the anxiety is working on its own, and part of the reason I think that is because it can come at me in such different settings.
Mm-hmm.
That it can come at me in the workplace. It can come at me while I'm on the couch at home trying to relax. So I think that fact kind of points it. It does seem to me like it has a kind of mind of its own, because it's not always connected to like how many things I have to get done.
Mm-hmm. And when you first start feeling anxiety come into your body, you described it as your heart racing. Is there a period between not feeling it and your heart racing that you've noticed? Or does it kind of feel like it comes out of nowhere?
I would say sometimes it comes out of nowhere. Sometimes I think there is a short period where I just start to get overwhelmed. Like this will happen sometimes even while I'm just making a to-do list before I even start doing anything,
Mm-hmm.
and just seeing the numbers add up on the to-do list. Sometimes I'll start feeling overwhelmed then, but it might take 30 minutes or so before my anxiety physical feelings have really ramped up to the fullest extent.
Okay. So I think from us talking here today, I get the sense that it's a pretty powerful problem, and it can really feel like it takes over your life at some points. And then at other times, you also feel like you do have the ability to manage it. So I'm wondering, how up to this point have you managed to keep it from getting even more difficult for you?
Um, I try to just, when I get really overwhelmed sometimes, I just try to kind of slow down and, if it is work related, I tell myself that, these things will eventually get done. I don't have to do everything. I can ask my colleagues for help. Um, and that's kind of it. So I'm kind of looking for, kind of new tools to deal with it because I do try to relax and talk myself down, but it doesn't always work. And it doesn't always work quickly. So trying to improve that.
Hmm. It sounds like you're really off to a good start. Sort of pulling in other perspectives, practicing some breathing, and doing everything you feel like you can do right now. So, part of what we'll do in our next couple of sessions is maybe we can do some activities together to gain some more skills to help feel like you can overcome these feelings of anxiety more frequently than you feel like you can do it right now.
That sounds good. Thank you.